Great. Hi, everyone. My name's Sam Lewis-Williams. I'm the head of marketing automation within the consumer revenue group. I'll go into a little bit more about what that means. But I want to start off just by saying that this is a much less technical talk than the one you've just heard. So please bear with me. I do at one point talk about coding. I'm very aware what I'm going to show you is not coding. It's just what we call it in marketing to create kind of personalization and stuff like that. So I want to make sure you're all aware of the level of technology that I'm going to be talking about. So what I'm going to be talking about specifically is keeping up with the newsroom and how we use our marketing automation technology to stay as responsive as possible across our marketing comms. So as I mentioned, I'm part of the consumer revenue group. I sit within the customer experience and loyalty marketing team. And as I mentioned, I'm the head of marketing automation, which is all a lot of words to say. We look after that B2C subscription part of the business, and my team specifically talk to known users, so our registered users, our active subscribers and trialists, and we build out the customer communication journeys and experiences through our platform Bloomreach. So if someone signs up to be a trialist, my team have built the email and on-site message journey that tries to get them to engage with their trial and ultimately convert at the end. We also have a number of automations live across our active subscriber base. So we're constantly sort of trying to identify users who are super engaged, less engaged, and make sure we're getting the right content, tools, and features in front of them on the channel where they're most engaging with the FT. So we're doing all of that, but not in a silo. We are thinking about the overall CRG strategic plan. So across the entire CRG, we're thinking about how we can be more customer first. So constantly delivering more personalized, high value experiences that meet the needs of subscribers. We're obviously a premium brand, so we want to make sure that everything that our customers are looking at, engaging with, is a premium experience and has premium positioning. We obviously want to maximize our reach. So at the moment, my team in Bloomreach focus mainly on email and on-site message, but we're constantly thinking about how we as a global brand can be more responsive across lots of more different channels to be where our customers actually are. And underneath all of this, we want to make sure we are driving innovation and we're thinking about new and interesting ways to get these messages in front of customers, both at the point before they subscribe and afterwards when they get to renewal. The bit that my team really focus on is this kind of tailored experience bit. So because we're looking after email and on-site message, we have the power to be really customer first and ultimately create that premium experience. So I just want to take a step back and think about how, in general, we tailor our communications. We use a number of things to flow into our emails. We obviously look at demographic data. So when someone signs up and fills in that reg or subscription form, we'll look at their industry, their region, their name, their position. We'll also be looking constantly at their behavioral data. So Bloomreach is helping us track things that people are doing on site, articles they might read, topics they might follow, journalists they might be engaging with. And of course, we also have some data science models like the MyFT topic recommendation and newsletter recommendation models also flowing into Bloomreach, which means we can use all of those to power communications that end up looking something like this. So this, for example, is a headlines campaign. I know it's very small, but basically, this is something that might trigger 2 or 3 times a week to someone who maybe needs a little bit of a nudge in their engagement. And ultimately, what this is doing is it's recommending articles for people to read based on, in this case, their region, their industry, and what they may or may not have read already. But we can also do it in different ways. So this is an example from our subscriber onboarding experience where we want people to engage in different topics with different journalists and obviously sort of start reading at the weekend. So we're able to use, again, different mixes of behavioral data, demographic data, and data science models to create these recommendations so that no 2 people, when they sign up for the FT, ideally, are seeing the same email. Similarly here, we're talking to people about downloading the app, signing up to newsletters and following topics. And while we use recommendation engines to suggest different topics or newsletters for people to follow, ultimately, we can also take away some of these rows at random. So if someone has already downloaded the app, we don't want to tell them to download the app. If someone is already following up to sort of a really decent amount of newsletters, we'll probably not show them this row. And we can use that data in Bloomreach to do that. And finally, this is just an example of something that we might send at random where, say, something big happens in the editorial world. We'll send a letter from Ruler and then create sort of special personalized recommendations at the bottom. Again, all based on information we actually have about the customer. But this setup in Bloomreach can be complex and a little bit limited sometimes in its personalization. This is what one of those emails look like. And this is where I want to talk about code. So this is an example of an email template sitting in Bloomreach. And basically all of this different stuff here, all of these different elements of the email there and here are all different ways that we pull in content APIs from ft.com. So what we're saying here is a bunch of different things that basically says if the customer region is in Europe, then show them European headlines. Otherwise, if their customer region is in, say, US and Canada, show them US and Canada headlines. We use a separate tool called the Content Feed Builder, where we will basically build streams of content to say, this is what we want people in the US to see. And we match that up via something called a webhook in Bloomreach, which pulls the API through. We do this coding in here. And at the point of open, that is then what the customer sees. They'll see 3 articles in this case from our European headline stream that we've built ourselves. And again, someone in Europe will see something different to someone in the US. Here, we're pulling through specific premium columns. We've got unhedged, Lex, and free lunch, and we'll just pull 1 through article here. And also what we can do is then layer on top of that things like if a user, again, hasn't downloaded the app yet, we might encourage this will only show up if that user hasn't done that. So we're not a big team. I've got 2 people in the team capable of kind of building this, and it can take them a while. It's really, really difficult to test because we can't do live tests with this. We can only do live tests with this. What I mean by that is we can't use like a preview state in Bloomreach. We have to physically set up a seed list and send a test, which has resulted in subscribers getting test emails sent to them before. So we don't love doing that. So we tend to kind of set it up and then not forget about it, but not touch it for a little while. Taking a step to the side, Movable Ink is a platform that can help make our emails more personalized at the point of open. I'll explain a little bit more about that, what that specifically means in a moment. But basically, Movable Ink is a third-party tool that we have got running in conjunction with Bloomreach. It has something that looks like this, which is just a little studio of lots of different apps and fun things you can do with emails, like an add to calendar, or polling, or a bar chart to display different kinds of data, a countdown timer, which is one of my favorite things, general image personalization, QR code generators, the weather, which I have yet to find a use case for. If anyone has any ideas on how we can use the weather to personalize emails, I would love to hear it. And scratch off or peel off. So we've used some of these in the past quite basically. So this is a nice little poll we used back when we were still voting on the Brexit deal. So people could actively kind of say, do we think this deal will be accepted or rejected? And when they did it, it would look at all of the other clicks that other people were doing and tell them kind of how the vote was going. This is an example of image personalization, so it's pulling through my name. This is the countdown timer that we tend to use for a lot of sales and things like that. We've got a really clear end date. And this is a peel to reveal. So when we launch a sale, we'll be able to say, look, you can literally peel in the email away, and there is your personalized offer sitting underneath it. So these are all really cool. And we're kind of using these in ad hoc ways across lots of our different campaigns. We'll tend to sort of, if we're building something new, say, hey, is there anything we can use Movable Ink for? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but it's just a fun thing that we have. But even with this, that personalization is still a really long, difficult process. We can't create different variations fast enough. You can only personalize based on the segmentations that already exist in Bloomreach. It requires that complex manual coding that I spoke about before. The content locks at send time, and we have to basically rebuild everything from scratch for every single campaign. And ultimately, these aren't our numbers. This is an industry graph, but email engagement is on a downward trend. So we're seeing, even with all that fun Movable Ink stuff, people are not clicking on emails as much as they were. People are very used to having very high expectations for email, for them to be hyper-personalized. And simply put, we're not doing a good enough job across the industry of making sure that our emails are as engaging as they could be. And we've got this as well. This is a direct quote from someone who spoke to customer care. They have ridiculously high standards for the FT. So we've also got that to live up to and think about. So what happens when we can't plan for the news agenda, which is what this talk is actually about? Shoot, I've got 5 minutes. Basically, last month, something happened. And while this was very sad, Trump crashing the markets, ultimately our B2C conversions went through the roof. So that was great. This affected our entire audience, but also the entire CRG. So as a group, we had to think about pricing, promotions, and offers to respond to this news agenda, paid media, on-site messaging, subs engagement, and reg conversion. So across all of those different channels where we talk to users, we had to manually go in and update this to reflect something that was clearly driving a lot of engagement with our audience. So what we did is we rushed to update those content APIs to make sure that the APIs that were flowing through were matching with what was happening in the news agenda. But as I mentioned, they look at the point of send. For example, an email might send at 11 o'clock in the morning because that's the time that it's scheduled for. At 11:10, Trump does something interesting. At 11:30, editorial update articles to reflect that interesting something, and they hit publish. At 11:45, our customer realizes they have an email from the FT. The subject line talks about US politics and policy, and obviously they expect that this email is going to reflect the thing that has just happened, but it's out of date because it locked at the point of send at 11 a.m. And ultimately that makes us look like we're not on the ball, we're not keeping up with stuff that our own editorial team is doing. It can also take us a really long time to update stuff. We have over 60 live campaigns, 10 plus emails per campaign, that difficult coding, harder live testing. So getting one high converting or engaging article into a 10 email campaign can take more than a week. That is not a great experience when something as big as crashing the markets happened. So we wanted to use that traffic spike as an opportunity to test something new. We wanted to think about how we could use Movable Ink to quickly update our comms in as many places as possible with the most relevant and engaging articles. We used something called a collapsible pixel, and that was my face when we started to think about it because I didn't know what it was. I'll rush through this very, very quickly because I'm running out of time. But basically, in Movable Ink, what we can do is we can build something that basically uses the same targeting as our Bloomreach data to say, if these users meet the specific criteria, this pixel will appear in emails with that featured article. And if the user doesn't meet that criteria, it will disappear. In practical reasons or practical setup, what this means is that during a traffic spike, we can say, we want to show this article because we know people are really engaging with it. It's going to be high converting. Let's get it across X number of our Reg user campaigns, have it light up everywhere, have it run for a certain amount of time, and then we can just take it away when that traffic spike is passed. So rushing through that. So suddenly, across all our live Reg user articles, this high converting article appeared, which is all about the traffic spikes. And we updated it throughout the experience to match what editorial was talking about. Overall, it got over 70K impressions. It had a 1.8% click-through rate on that bit alone, and it raised our overall campaign click-through rate by around 14% during that week. Now, don't get me wrong, people were more engaged in general, but the fact is we could see that the majority of clicks were going to this article that we knew was driving engagement. It also accounted for 38% of all registered user conversions during that spike, which is insane. We don't usually see that from our communications. In general, we'll maybe account for 10 to 12% weekly of our reg user conversions from our emails. So this was nuts that just putting this one email that took us about 3 minutes to get across all our campaigns was driving so much engagement and conversion. And the best part, this article can continue to be updated if we take the example of the locking at send. This doesn't lock at send, it locks at the point of open. So at the point that the campaign sends, you open the email, you see the high converting article. The example we had was that on Easter Monday, then the Pope died. So we quickly updated it to a Pope related article. And that was then what appeared in the email, even if people went to go back and check that email that they'd received the previous week. So you can see currently, this is an email I got that week. This is now the article that's appearing. 2 weeks ago when I did this presentation, this was about the Pope, but we can continue to update this. This is that same email from 2 weeks ago, which is magic as far as I'm concerned. Who would have thought that hyper-personalized relevant content is what the people really want? Thank you very much.